instead of us having 10 machines rendering 1,000 frames, I can have 1,000 machines render one frame. And you get your CG renders back as long as it takes one frame to render.
Welcome back to another episode of the Rough Cut Club. I am your host, Joey Nicotra, here with my co-host, the one, the only, Shane Reitzammer. Shane, how are you, brother?
Doing great, man. Doing great. Excited to be in the studio today with a good friend of ours.
Yes, back in the studio today with a very special guest. We have my good friend, Mr. Wes Meyers, in the building. He is one of the most talented visual effects artists in the game right now, compositing king. And so, Wes, welcome to the studio, brother.
Thanks for having me. Don't oversell me too. I don't want to disappoint.
Nah, man. Wes is. We've had a chance to work on a pretty cool project together back in the day, and I was blown away when I saw the beginning of the shot and final product. I was like, "Yo, Wes is." He's on every visual effects project that I got going forward from here on out, man.
It's true. Anytime we talk about, VFX or something we're gonna produce, and we're like, well, let's ask Wes with Burning Tractor.
Yeah.
Let's see what he thinks. So, man, you definitely top of mind when we're discussing, short films, features, commercial projects.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. When I think of visual effects, I think of Wes. So, Wes, just to name drop a couple of the companies that you've worked with. I mean, we've got Amazon, Netflix, HBO, Showtime, Apple, major movies.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about just some of the major films that you've done as well.
So just in the past few years, so The Morning Show, Jason Momoa, Dexter season 3.
Oh, nice.
So sick.
Amazon's Panic, recently Emancipation with Will Smith.
So epic.
And then really recently Air with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. So
that is incredible, man. Well, we are honored to have you in the studio today. Welcome to the Rough Cut Club. We kind of want to dive into just some of your story. And before we get into some of those fun, exciting topics, I just want you to take me all the way back to like the beginning of your filmmaking journey.
Sure.
Give me a little bit of your backstory and kind of how you got in the game, man.
Sure. Well, it all started with a tractor, basically. I grew up on a farm in East Texas, and we had horses. And so my brother and I, we essentially did all the chores, but we showed horses. And so our parents bought digital cameras and like the first IMAX, and they were very tech savvy. So when we were kids, we always kind of had the state-of-the-art like Apple technology or whatever. And so they were using the cameras to make horse videos. We started very early on with digital video, and we're obsessed with music videos, the late 80s, early 90s. That kind of thing. And so that's sort of like the hobby that, sort of led to today. So originally I wanted to be a musician. I never wanted to do VFX ever, And now I own a VFX company. Great. But it's not, it was not the dream. So I played drums and wanted to produce music growing up. When I went to school, they didn't have a music business program, and I didn't want to be in band because I didn't want to be a band director or play an orchestra. So college for me was sort of a trip. I kind of went through a bunch of different realms: advertising, radio, television, film, pre-med, business, and ended up a linguistics major. So
wow. I did not know that.
Dabbled in it all, man. That's awesome.
So I was sort of somewhat pathless. I actually took time off, got into the music scene, gigged with bands, had a couple almost successes, but then failures. Did some acting and modeling in my time. And same thing, I got cast on a reality show. Thought I was going to make $500,000 like in my early 20s. And then the show got canceled right before it started. So that was sort of where my VFX journey began, because my parents were like, we're tired of you. Get a real job.
Amazing.
Get a real job. Can we know what the reality show was? They got canceled?
Yeah, it was called The Vault 12, and it was leading up to Doomsday 2012. And so they were going to take 12 people, lock them in an old missile silo underground. And so it was going to be a year-long experiment like Big Brother. So they were going to do episodes, but alongside of that, there was going to be like security camera footage so you could log online subscription style and see what we were doing anytime. So it was 5 guys,
insane.
7 girls. And if you survived, $500,000.
Wow.
That's a pretty good.
I know. That's a really good
Yeah.
concept, actually. That's amazing
I'm
that you
sad that we didn't get to see that.
I
But yeah, I'm
know.
glad you weren't locked away for a year. It probably would have slowed the business down, right?
Yeah, so I started in visual effects at a company called Worldwide Effects. It was in Shreveport, Louisiana, and my brother was there. He was the supervisor at the time, and I got hired into a night shift. And so I made minimum wage. I was across the street from a Walmart parking lot in this old asbestos building, and I went there. I interviewed. It wasn't something I wanted to do, and I was like, this is not me. I really don't want to do this, but. The way they worked is you would get 2 weeks to do tutorials. If you got through those, they give you 2 more weeks, and they'd give you something a little bit harder, and then they'd give you 2 more weeks and a slight pay bump. And then if you got through that 6-week period, you're full time, and then you were on the show. And so we were working on The Mechanic with Jason Statham, Drive Angry, which was a Nick Cage film. We ended up doing Conan the Barbarian with Jason Momoa at there. All the Gerard Butler, like Olympus Has Fallen.
Oh yeah.
All those. They came out of that studio. And so
Were you actually on the team that worked on Olympus Has Fallen?
I had left by that point.
Okay.
So, but that's kind of where I cut my teeth. And it was, I didn't like it at first, but I saw that there was a ladder to climb.
Yeah.
And there was probably about 60 compositing artists there. Within a couple years, I was in the top 5 of those people.
Wow.
And so really just, it was sort of, it was definitely a grind. It was like, school cafeteria where you're just elbow to elbow with the next guy. They're very strict. It was like show up at 8, headphones on, go to work. You take a break at 10 to 10:15. You get a lunch break 12 to 1, and it just the system went like that.
It's a factory.
And there was no talking. No nothing in between. Like you were just at your machine, and they gave you shot quotas, and you had to knock them out. But I was a good problem solver, and so they would throw me harder and harder shots, and so I was doing really technical sequences like. In Conan the Barbarian, Conan's or the princess's stunt double broke her leg, so they put Conan's stunt double on a horse in a dress to be the princess to ride through this forest and then take a fall. And then they'd come to me, and it was Bulgarians that ran the shop, so they're like, "Make him princess." Dang. And I'm like, "Oh, okay," So, and they're like, "You have 40 hours, like." Do it. And it's like, all right. And that shot's in the film somehow. It looks terrible, but.
Dang. That's crazy, man.
But yeah, so from there, I had it was actually a girl that took me to Dallas. I won't get too much into that, but it was a long distance relationship. I ended up getting a job at a company called Element X Creative and kind of took a risk going there. It was a contract gig for a show. But after they finally got me in the door, I was there about 2 weeks, and they're like, "Do you want a full-time job?" And I was like, "Yes, this would be great." So Element was a great place. My boss was this guy named Chad Briggs. He really took me under his wing. And so not only was I their visual effects supervisor, became a creative director. I started editing. I learned motion graphics, started doing color. The creative direction was really fun. Got to direct commercials. And then started doing part of the bidding process and also sales meetings and then going on sales trips. And so it was sort of the owners of the company, and they kind of put me like right under their wing. And so for 5 or 6 years I was there and learned a ton about the business, organization, efficiencies, that kind of thing. But by the end of it, I'd burn out. As and a lot of people know in the film industry, the days are long. Sometimes there's no weekends, there's no vacations, especially in visual effects and post-production. It's a deadline-driven industry. And so if you're sort of the end of the line, which I was at that studio, every job that went through there, I would probably touch at the end for finishing or some regard.
Yeah.
So 16-hour days, no weekends for years on end. I was overweight. I was pale. It's like, I can't.
Haven't seen the sun in a long time.
I hadn't seen the sun, and I just wasn't really, my career hadn't progressed to a point where I thought it should. And so I left, and I was like, maybe the film industry is not for me. And so I actually packed up all my stuff. I left town. I moved back home with my parents, and I started a graphic T-shirt company.
And what year was this?
This was about 7 years ago.
Okay.
A graphic T-shirt company. And for those just listening on, podcast outlets and not seeing the YouTube version, Wes now has a tan and he looks to be in good shape.
Yes.
So there's a good ending to the story ahead, I believe. So that's awesome. So T-shirt company, how'd that go? How long did that last?
It lasted about 9 months, and so it was my first try at like really starting a business from the ground up. And I'd run into a guy that made T-shirts, and I went to his studio, and he had the printers, and he had some employees, and it was like a bathroom stall girl that was like falling over, and it said "bitches be tripping," and he's like, man, I'm just like printing money, and I was like, what I do is hard. I was like, this does not seem hard, I was like, I can design this stuff all day long, just like, and T-shirts, fun, it's like puns, everything else. So I took all my savings and I bought a T-shirt printer. I was like buying a car, and we set it up out at my folks' place. They live in the swamp in Uncertain, Texas, near Caddo Lake.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so, started doing that. Kind of partnered with my mom. We blew through all the money very quickly. And it was about 6-7 months in. I probably had $900 left in my name. And we had just started selling on Amazon. It was probably going to be our first successful month. And I got a call from a studio, and they said, hey, we've heard of you. We hear you're a VFX supervisor. We have a sci-fi show that's filming in Austin. Our on-set guy can't go. Could you fill in for us? And so this is a VFX company calling me. And I was like, yeah, I need money. So yes, that'd be great. And then about 2 hours later, another VFX company from LA calls me, and they're like, hey, we're looking for someone in Texas. We got your name. We hear you're a VFX supervisor. There's a sci-fi thing filming in Austin. Can you be our guy? And I was like, sounds like the same thing. Sure, yeah, I can, yeah. So then I get a call from production, and they're like, hey, we're bidding 3 VFX vendors. 2 of them said you're the VFX soup. Who are you? And I was like, well, I'm out here, and I'm printing T-shirts with my mom. Anyways, so they gave me, they wanted me to come in for an interview, and essentially what happened is they pulled me in, and they're like, we're just going to hire you. All of our vendors are over budget. We want you to do not only soup, but do all the vendor negotiations and sort of like the creative direction and art design for VFX to sort of guide the thing into budget. So I was like, sure, great, sounds good. So started working with the vendors. I couldn't get anybody close to the budget. And this was a wild, the show was actually called Crunch Time. It's in around 2015, but it was a sci-fi comedy where like you put on a headset and you go into like the dream world, and it's essentially the Matrix and anything can happen. And so the creative and the comedy was just like insane, so it's just really anything can happen. And as a VFX company now, those are the types of shows that we're terrified of because, we're like, oh, we don't know about this.
Yeah. But what are they going to write, right? What's next?
Yeah. So what happened is by the end of it, I couldn't get anyone to the budget, and I knew how to do the stuff. And so the hard sequences I sent to the lowest bidder, and then I created my own separate bid for the rest of the work that was more like in my personal repertoire, and the producers agreed. And so I walked away with that show making more money in a month than I had ever in a year.
Wow. That's awesome.
And so with that, I was able to buy machines, buy software. I was hired some freelance artists, and that was sort of the birth of Burning Tractor. I didn't know if that was going to be a thing or not. At that point, my intention was actually still to go back to T-shirts because I felt like that was about to take off, and the lifestyle was not VFX post-production, that I was trying to escape. But at the same time, I ended up getting calls from previous clients in Dallas that I had worked with like through the other company, and they wanted me to start bidding against, the other competitors. And so, the budgets, they just exploded. And so that was sort of it. And I was like, I can't ignore this. And so I left the T-shirt stuff, sold it, came back, and that was when I officially kind of created Burning Tractor. And so the first year I was on my own, saving money. A really good friend of mine's named Robert Reynolds. He's my number 2 guy. He had gone to a different studio, but we both worked together at Element X. And so I was kind of keeping him in the loop of everything. And when I finally felt comfortable, I was like, hey, I can bring you on, and I can afford to pay you for 1 year. Will you do it? And the guy said yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And so at that point, there was 2 of us, and that was kind of the beginning.
And so what does your business look like today? So that was close to 7 years ago.
Yes.
Fast forward to today, you guys have your own studio in Dallas.
Yes.
And what does your team look like? What's the business like today?
So it is massive compared to that. Full time is only 10 people. So it's 10 full time artists, or producers, artists, etc. But we have a huge outsource model. So we will actually crew up 100 to 200 folks overseas for different amount of shows. And so, as we kind of worked through the process, originally sort of like you try to keep your hands on everything, but as new challenges arise, you have to problem solve. And so we built some great networks with some companies in India. And so sort of the grunt labor, like rotoscoping, paint work, tracking, all those things get outsourced. So it allows us to output 50 to 100 shots a week instead of 100 shots in a month. If it was just us, we wouldn't be able to do it. And so using that, our artists are then sort of the senior level technicians that do the final assembly.
Wow. That is such a cool story from start A to, start A is not even a word. From point A to point B, man. It's cool to just hear everything that y'all have built in the last 7 years. And it's super inspiring. So on that note, we kind of talked earlier on about how you go about getting your clients, to be able to output that many, how you have that many clients requesting videos. Tell me a little bit about the certification process that you guys kind of underwent.
So the gaining clients, we've actually never done sales ever. The entire business has grown word of mouth. It was word of mouth that took me from T-shirts back into it. And the way it originally started is, so I was first at Worldwide Effects. Worldwide did a terrible thing where they laid everybody off. It was like show finished, and there's 80 of us, and everyone got laid off except for a couple of us. Literally, there was 5 left.
Wow.
But all that network dispersed, and a lot of those top people are now supervisors at major studios all over the world.
Wow.
And so that was the original sort of network burst that at the time was a tragic thing, but ended up being a very good thing for us. And so we started working on Netflix type shows or stuff that was on cable TV, like USA shows, things like that. But it was all under the table. It's where some of those people that worked at these different VFX companies knew of us, and so they would outsource their work to us under the table. So non-confidentiality, NDA'd, that thing, but no credit. And so I knew that we were very close to where we would get those shows. I was but I thought we were probably a year or so away, and this was probably 4 years into the company. And I was we're there, but we're not ready yet. We need more infrastructure. We need more organization. But we got a call, and it was the head of VFX for Amazon original content. So the guy's name was Mark Sadeghi. So he calls me and goes, "Hey, Wes, my name's Mark Sadeghi. I'm the head of VFX for all Amazon original content. How you doing?" Oh, shit. Yeah, I'm doing great. How are you, Mark? He's so we have an Amazon show in Texas, and we think you guys are going to be a great part of the team. So looked at your reel, looks great. Tell us about yourself. So I patted us a little bit. I was we got an office, we got this many people, et cetera, et cetera. He's great. That all sounds good. He goes, "Are you TPN certified?" I was no. I was what's that? "Oh, it's no big deal. Just get it done, and we'll make it happen." And so it's Trusted Partners Network is the certification. And essentially, with the Sony hack or Disney had their own certifications, Marvel, et cetera, what it is, it's 402 touch points. 201 of those are physical security, and 201 of those are cybersecurity. And so this is essentially Pentagon level security that guarantees the security of studio content if it comes through your pipeline.
Wow.
And so this is data IO. This is badges on employees. This is key lock doors. This is security cameras. These are firewalls. This is cybersecurity perpetual monitoring. This is annual audits that you have to pay for in addition.
Wow.
And so a huge lift, especially, I'm a kid from East Texas, farm boy. I've always been a creative person, but I'm not a technical, I gotta claw my way through the technical. And so getting through this was a pain. And I was also on set starting the pre-production on this show, which is a massive show. And so I'm not even at the studio. So I'm just calling the guys I'm like, don't worry, it's going to be fine. Just like get this and this and this. And our server at this time was a wooden box that, looked like a cat box that was just like screwed in and, we plugged it in. We're like, oh, it works, it's great.
Yeah.
So we had our first audit and we failed miserably. This guy absolutely skewered us. Diedrich Thomas is his name. Great guy. Really.
Shout out Diedrich.
Yes. Diedrich, you're the man.
If you're listening.
Diedrich does all our audits now, and he's incredible. But
Awesome.
he can't, as an auditor, they can't help you. So it's like, well, Diedrich, if you know how it's supposed to work, can you set it up? And he goes, check out this webpage. And then it's
Yeah.
like, it's like you start with a 90-page PDF, and then you click on the one thing which leads you to another 90-page PDF.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I've had like inspectors on my house do very similar things where they're like, well, this is all the stuff that's wrong, but we can't really tell you how to fix it. And
Right.
it's like, oh my gosh.
Like, oh,
Yeah.
so we had to call in some experts, or we called in some cybersecurity guys. So the physical wasn't too difficult. It's like, keypads, doors, cameras.
Yeah.
I was like, that's, Home Depot stuff. But the cyber, very, very difficult to make sure it all works properly and is secure. And so, yeah, we plowed through it. We got it set up, and it was sort of, thank you, Amazon and Amazon Studios, for trusting us and allowing us to do this. Because they were essentially, they had, the big like, ILM or the mill or whoever is just like on the line waiting to do the show because they can just call these companies and they'll do the show. But they were letting us like put through the paces, and they gave it to us. And so that was our step in. And what happened from there is once you get those security certifications, you're essentially on a vendor roster with the major studios.
Wow.
And so if Amazon's looking for a vendor, Apple's looking for a vendor, HBO, Netflix, et cetera, they can go through the trusted partners list, and they know that when they call you, you're already secure, you're already certified, they're not having to re-audit you, and you're a trustworthy company within the business. And not only are you trustworthy, but you're already outputting at an extremely high level. So even quality and content, they're not as concerned about.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's kind of the shoe in.
I didn't even know
I
about
know.
this. And so, if you had to put like a ballpark number, like how much, you guys had to invest to get that.
Oh yeah, it was
security.
100, 150K.
So it's a six-figure,
And then
investment,
that's
yeah.
ongoing.
yeah.
And so that's still like I have to pay cybersecurity fees, $1,500 a month just for cybersecurity fees.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy overhead.
Ongoing, yeah. Overhead for it, yeah.
Uh,
but totally worth it, obviously, if you're, getting
100%.
hit by Amazon and
Right,
Apple. And,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just it's the risk reward, not knowing if you're going to be able to get the job that's actually going to pay for all the money you just spent.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So
Dang, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
I just love how, this guy, Wes, you quit and you start doing T-shirts, right? And then you get 2 calls from being in the right room with the right people, right? Networking. So we
Yeah.
talk about that a lot, like, knowing the right people in the industry and, creating those relationships, and those paid off, dragged you back into it, right? Into Austin.
Yeah.
And then same thing because of the people you knew. I'm guessing that's the connection that, that's how Amazon reached out to you and said, hey, we want you to scale up to be able to do this gig. So
Yeah.
you've constantly been like pulled into the industry. And I'll be honest, man, the fact that this guy doesn't have to do sales at all, that's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing. People are knocking down his door trying to get in. So congrats, man.
Oh, thank you.
And I think it's a cool testament too, because there's so many artists out there that are waiting for that next big break, or have been, struggling to get clients or get in the industry. And, your story, it's cool because you weren't even, fighting for it. But the opportunity presented itself to you. And you just never know, like, when that next call is coming that could change everything.
It's for those out there, it's where opportunity meets
Preparation, yep.
Yeah, 100%. And so the reason I became successful was like I was a dog when I was on the box. Like when I was an artist every day, I was a dog, and I wasn't going out there telling people I was the best. I was just a dog on the box. And so it was that. And then when they saw, hey, this guy outputs, it was that started spreading the name.
And that's another thing too. Like I look back at even just like my early grind days, like in college, where I was like up editing till 7 o'clock in the morning, and it was going on, like 13 hours straight, and doing all of these passion projects, just grinding, trying to learn the craft, hone my talents and whatnot. And there's so much that goes into the early days of just learning the craft, and that was something that I wanted to ask you about, just because there's so much intimidation, I think, with VFX more than almost any other, industry, if you will, within the film industry itself. VFX is scary. Like for the average guy, you're like, I've jumped into After Effects. I've dove into
It's still scary for me.
Right. And so I kind of want to just talk about, those early grind days, like what drew you in, how you learned, how to do all this stuff. I mean, because even 7 years ago, the VFX industry isn't what it is today.
Oh, no, yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about just some of those early grind years, like learning the skills, man.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, I was a linguistics major in college. So, I didn't come out with a lot.
Yeah. Right.
I could read between the lines, can do accents.
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
But no, so it was learning on the job. But then most of the tutorials and most of the content you can find online.
Okay.
And so it was sort of one when, like, if you have a nail and a hammer, and like, any of us can pick up a nail and a hammer and we can hammer something in. But a guy that uses a nail and hammer every day, day in and day out, is like really going to use that tool.
Yeah.
So all of VFX software are nails and hammers. And yes, there are more ins and outs, but there is a huge mountain of content out there for learning and technique. And so what's interesting with visual effects and the software, a lot of it's node-based, is when you're dealing with software like that, that's not linear. That it's almost like how your brain works, and everyone's brain works differently. And so you can achieve the same effect 10 different ways. And so that's part of it. It's like, okay, I achieved the effect, but did I achieve it the most efficient way?
Right.
And so then for me, it was sort of those two mantras, was like, achieve the effect, but then do it faster and do it better and do it with less computing power.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of and also I was blessed where I was given hard stuff. So it's like I would be given hard things to do. And so you just have to learn.
Constantly being challenged.
Yeah. So you're constantly under the gun, and you're constantly under a deadline. So it's like you're in the end of a 12-hour beer pong tournament and you got one cup left. It's like if you excel in that pressure, you'll do well in VFX.
Right. That's awesome, man. Well, on the note of just like, those early days, talk to me a little bit about what it's been like to see the evolution of the VFX industries in your time, in the game. Because, if you look at movies that were made 7 years ago, the VFX on them were good, but the stuff that they're coming out with today, like, y'all are in a really rapidly growing industry where the tech is changing.
Yes.
Tell me what it's like being in the middle of that evolution.
Well, don't get into this industry if you don't like learning.
Yeah.
So
Constant.
it is. Yes, it's and for me, like I like the challenge, but it's because we're perpetually having to get better. If we just stayed doing what we were doing 3 years ago, like we're just staying doing that, and eventually going to fizzle out. So. The tools now are incredible, and I'm super jealous because we have these artists that are extremely talented, but they now have push button stuff where we were like, if I had to track something to someone's face and they're grimacing and whatnot, like I'd probably track like their nose, their ears, and so I would get like a 3D track that's just like this solid morphing thing like this. But then as they're grimacing, then I'm having to grid warp the blood or whatever I'm putting on them to like perfectly match the motion of their face. This is just hours and hours and hours of just like, the look
Tedious.
is there. Yeah, you're like dialed in, but it's like I got now that's okay. That's the thing. I do this, Oh, and then crash. Oh, come on. Where now it's like, oh, we can hit a button. We have a thing called face tracker. You line it up, and they're like, whoa, 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 and it does this, and I'm like, that is just not fair.
Yeah.
And it looks perfect in like an hour. So the tools are better, but there's way more content than there used to be. So we have to get through things faster and that kind of thing. And then, the CG side is just insane. And it's growing exponentially. And then, COVID changed everything and is created a push to the cloud. And so now everything is moving cloud. We're in the process of transitioning our studio to a hybrid cloud setup as well. And so you, at a click of a button, can spool up virtual machines that are then connected to a virtual server that you can have artists log into anywhere in the world. And so, and with different types of software. So if you're doing Houdini simulations, that kind of thing, and you'll actually be able to spool up multiple machines for that simulation. Or you're able to get the most bad to the bone computer you could possibly imagine that you're just paying hourly for. As soon as you're done with your sim, delete it. You're not paying for it anymore.
Wow.
And so instead of like now, so for instance, right now, if I onboarded an artist, it probably cost me 20 grand in equipment. Because I have to buy a badass computer.
Yeah.
I have to buy the $10,000 software and then the other $5,000 software and then get everything licensed, and that's before they can come to the office and even sit down, forget their salaries and everything else on top of that. So growing is tough because it's like, okay, is this person worth it? Because you're just, you're essentially buying them a car to use in the front end. And so the cloud, it's definitely a different pricing structure, but your ability to go scale down. Scale down. So you can project base all of that stuff and your power. So, instead of us having 10 machines rendering 1,000 frames, I can have 1,000 machines render one frame. And you get your CG renders back as long as it takes one frame to render.
That is interesting.
And so that's the power. So when you are dealing in these like heavy deadline driven environments and you have to output, it costs money, but as long as you're billing that appropriately, you have the power to, as long as it takes one frame to render, to output those shots and get them to client and get them over the edge.
Wow.
And that is really interesting.
I feel like the emoji with the
I know,
mind exploding,
like-
like that's me right now.
Well,
Just
and I'm
blows
just thinking too, like how that could compute too to some of the stuff that even we do. But I don't know if it really lines up exactly the same. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you, like, because you have so many projects, that you're juggling. Are you custom? Like, do you have multiple producers that are going out and helping custom tailor these to the client's needs? How does that process work?
So once a job comes in, we develop the system. We actually we change our system often because we're like, oh, well, that was new and we screwed that up. So let's try to not do that again.
Yeah.
So that's a constant evolution as well as process. And so, but yeah, the process is essentially the same. If we're going to do a job all the way through, it starts with a script. And so you start with script breakdowns, which is budget estimates, and then also shooting assumptions. And so you're working with the director, the DP, production design on who's doing what and how you're going to achieve. It's like, oh, this guy's supposed to fall off this thing, but we can't go up there, but we could build this over here. And so you're kind of working with like the UPMs and the line producers, who are juggling the overall budget to make sure that everyone's doing their piece and it like falls in line there. So that's the first step. Second step is on-set supervision. So it's like we've ironed out the kinks. Now let's just go do it and make sure we all do our jobs. And so on-set VFX supervision, pretty fun. I love it. It's a lot of sit around and wait, and then you have your big days. And so if it's big VFX sequences, you'll get to direct, which is awesome. So VFX supervision is sort of an inline. For some reason, you end up being the second unit director. Like they'll just be like, "Hey, go direct the second unit," and you're like, "Okay, sure, great."
Yeah.
And then on the large sequences, so it's fun when you just there's 80 people around and you're like running these like big rigs and you're like, man, actually, it's great. That's a lot of fun. So after that's all said and done, so things go to editorial and they'll lock the cut. You always want to get a locked cut before you start VFX so you're not working shots that then get deleted.
Yeah.
Some shows do this. If they have infinite money, they'll just pay for it and that's fine. But this is where the process is pretty tedious. So you develop a naming convention of this is what the shots are going to be called. This is the file formats. This is the color space. This is the LUT. This is how many handles we're going to have on each shot. This is the type of preview renders we're going to have. This is the type of final renders we're going to have. This is going to be the format of these, the format of these. This is where these go. This is where these go.
Wow.
The data I/O, security-wise, has to go through this channel, and these can go through this channel. And then we're going to do every Friday. We're going to do reviews via Evercast, yada yada yada. And so what we do is we try to build a pipeline that is as foolproof as possible. So Nuke is our primary compositing software, and Nuke Studio is how we set up projects. So when all of that footage comes in, it's generally image sequences, EXR sequences. Those will load into Nuke Studio. We'll do a transcode, which will create proxies and footage folders, and it also generates our folder structure so that we have like, here's the shot. Inside the shot is the footage, and then that'll auto-generate a denoised plate, and then that'll auto-generate a proxy. And then if we have like Paint or Roto, we have folders created for that, and then we have project files. So it's like Maya, Houdini, After Effects, Nuke. So all that just boom out of the gate gets made, and then it also creates all of your ins and outs. So if an artist opens a project, the footage is already in there, and where the final output goes to, it goes to that. Where the preview output, it goes to that. So they're not typing in a file path, they're not changing a color space, they're not changing any of that. It's locked in. And so on top of that is pipeline tools that we create. So the Nuke Studio generates a really nice kind of base, but it's like, well, we shot with all these different lenses, which we have lens distortion charts for that we need to undistort and add CG.
Wow.
So like we'll add all that in there. Then we'll add our custom color workflow. Or this is just 50 blue screen shots. We can add the blue screen workflow. So then we'll have a pipeline tool where it's like you drag in the shot, then you hit a button, and then it goes boom, and then it's like, all right, this is Burning Tractor's like workflow for this show.
Wow. That is such a technical, in-depth like process.
The systems, yeah, man.
Yeah,
I'm
the
drilling
systems.
over here because I'm a systems guy. Cinema Story, we scaled to do hundreds of clients. Almost 1,000 videos a year. We're getting to that level, and it's and it's a lot of corporate and commercial stuff, but you have to have systems and processes.
Mm-hmm.
And what I just heard for you tell me, I'm like, man, I feel like we're in our infancy of systems and processes. You definitely have that project flow. Speaking of project management, like CRM, do you guys use, are you using Asana or any kind of communication tools, or is it email and text and
So it's kind of client based what they like to use. I mean, we literally just started a Discord chat for one of our new ones. And I'm like, I don't like this, but I like email for internal tracking. We actually just use Airtable. We just built a really nice Airtable that we like, that we find efficient. Because there's other things like ShotGrid that are, it's $50 an artist or whatever, and it'll track everything. But we've kind of built a system that currently is working for us on that side. But again, there's efficiencies there. But yeah, it's lots of emails. It's sort of like setting intermediary deadlines too, so that we can be left alone. So it's like left alone, do a bunch of work, output a whole bunch, review a large chunk, re-ingest all the notes, and do that over and over again. And so there's people in play that sort of work through that. Because if I was just like, oh, that shot's done, send to client. Oh, this shot's done, send to client. You're going to end up just with a disaster.
Yeah,
so
it's chaos. Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of creating milestones along the way for how to ingest notes and have creative consultations at the appropriate times.
Yeah, that keeps your artist and you focused in the right zone. Time block. We do time blocking and stuff like that. Only focusing on certain tasks on certain days, and so I could see, having a tight, airtight process keeps your creatives where they need to be, like in that right headspace. That's awesome, man.
And we do group reviews too, which I think is a lot of fun. So sometimes it would just be one person watches everything. If like I'm going to be the last thing before it goes out the door, if I have to watch 100 shots and critique them. But we have a big 4K. Giant projector screen, and everyone sits in there, and we create a playlist of whatever the week's work and just let each other have it.
That's so fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
It creates such a like team building, like camaraderie too, just with everyone there to like see all the art that everyone's creating, get to leave feedback and notes on it.
We got to implement that at Cinema Story.
Yeah.
That's too fun.
It's cool company culture, man.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about just some of the like common challenges that you guys face that, you guys have to work through. I mean, obviously, there's the art of it, but are there any other like particular challenges that you guys commonly run into?
So cybersecurity is always a nightmare. Any type of growth, like right now we're going to cloud. And so that would be really easy if we didn't have cybersecurity. So we are constantly blocked out of every single step along the way because everything has to be whitelisted a certain way. And so what would be very quick is long and tedious and we also have to build it with the knowledge that we're going to get audited and they're going to like let us have it.
Dang.
All right, so that's kind of a common challenge. Honestly, like from the business side, it's like saying no. You know, you can't. It really stinks to have to turn down work, and when we know the team is overloaded and we know we're stacked and we know we have a bunch of stuff, and then a really great opportunity comes in the door. I go, yeah, let's do it. You know? And then I go tell the team, I'm like, hey guys, guess what? We just got this other thing, but it's gonna be great.
Everyone's working weekends.
So, you know, and that's we sort of change our system on like quotas and things like that. So when we do have multiple things going at once and we have overloaded ourselves, the team does respond pretty well to we start micromanaging deadlines. And so it's not like you have to get this done today, but we'll set, all right, 25 shots on this show this week, 30 shots on this show this week. And then we'll switch like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this show, and then Thursday, Friday, everyone this show. And
I feel like that's so much pressure. Like just that many like shots to have to execute in the time frame, man. It's crazy.
yeah, but a lot of these, you know, it's like sky replacements or same as shots.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Simpler stuff.
Yeah, but there's always like the big lingerers that it's like, okay, at some point we got to do this really hard shot. You know?
Right. So one of the things that I, you know, before we get you out of here and get into, you know, our last 5 questions, I want to add some value to our viewers. If there's somebody listening to this show and they're interested to get in the VFX game, what are some things that you could kind of leave them with to guide them on how to get started in the industry? Because, you know, as a filmmaker, it's like, hey, pick up a camera and start shooting, right?
Sure.
If you're an editor, you know, just start editing. I imagine it's similar to where it's like, get a program and just start. But I want to hear just from you, being at this point in your career, what's some advice you could give to the up and comer?
So it's the real. I'm not looking at your education. Especially if you're new, you're not going to have, you know, a resume. You're not going to have like, I've worked at these 5 companies. And so it's your reel. And, you know, if you know what you want to do in that game, if it's character animation, if it's motion graphics, if it's compositing, today, unlike when we were kids, I mean, you can film stuff with your phone. And so I saw something on Twitter the other day with some guy in his backyard, and he's like jumping off a trampoline, dressed like a Star Wars guy. And then he like Star Wars'd up the whole scene. So he showed the before and he showed the after, and it's legit. You know, is he tech savvy? Probably not. Does he understand color space? Probably not. File formats, you know, all the things, the nitty gritty, but that's fine. The reel looks awesome, which you know that guy can execute. And so then you're just going to show him pipeline. And so, yeah, for young kids, and that's, you know, some of our best talent, they did not go to college. They've been doing it since they were 14 in high school using After Effects. And they were able to walk in and be like, here's my reel. I really want a job. You know, I'm looking for an internship. And they're rock stars now. I mean, they are. When I was 30, I was not that good. And I mean, they're killing the game. And but they're passionate. So yes, there are VFX schools. They cost a lot of money. Some of them are going to be far, far behind because we have to be up to date with the now and our competitors. The schools are going to be 3 years back. And depending, you know, I don't want to say anything about the professors, but, you know, so the professors, you may have someone that's like from wherever, but you may have someone that just went through the program at that school that's now teaching it.
Wow.
You know, so... but yeah, I mean, make a killer reel, and then start reaching out.
That's good, man. That's super, super helpful. One thing, too, that I wanted to ask you, I was just curious about is you know, were a VFX artist yourself for a long time, but now you know, one of the things that we talk about is the art and business of filmmaking. And so I want to know just how, you know, with you managing a company that is outputting this type of volume, you know, how much do you get a chance to actually do the art still? And what does your relationship look like now with you actually doing the art versus running the business?
Sure. So for instance, a new film that we're going to be working on, I can't say too much about it, but it's called Iron Lung. It's with Markiplier. He's a YouTube star. The teaser that came out, I worked on, and I helped create all the logo animation for it. And so I did it literally while I was on set, VFX souping.
Wow.
So I have my computer there. I have all my skill sets and things that I've done, that I know how
Yeah.
to do. And it's like, hey, let's make this thing. Let's make it look cool. And so for me, it's a blast. So it's like I'm sitting there and I'm actually making creative art. But yeah, so I do jump in. I still jump in fairly often. But I think there's the art of being an artist and making good art. And a lot of times, and then teaching. I love teaching. So I love sitting down with my guys. They're very talented. And so, I'm just offering them experience. It's like they built this thing and I'm like, well, now I more like help them make it more efficient, or I may know some trick that I learned over the years that I'm like, well, why don't you try this note or this note or this note and see if that works? And then running a business is an art in itself,
Right.
so how to make all the pieces work together and the budgets work and keep it successful and running.
I got a follow-up question too, because it's the art versus business for me, and same as you, I love jumping in and doing the art side. Sometimes I get to write a commercial, sometimes I get to direct a commercial, a broadcast spot, sometimes I'm managing a project from start to finish, but I have to operate a business, and
Right.
I loved what you said. There's an art to it, so I'm going to remember that, and that's a driving force for us too, that we still get to be artists in running a business. But have you brought on anybody to help on the business side, or is it, do you have a COO or like a operations director or even an admin, that kind of thing? What's your structure look like there?
Yeah, so Diane is our executive producer, and she is integral in helping me run the business. And so a lot of times what will happen is I'll get emails, and it's just me. And so then I'll loop Diane in. So it's like she's making sure the meetings are on time. She's doing the invoices. She's doing the budget. She's keeping tabs of payroll and accounting and all of those things so that I can focus on just the creative and just making sure that everything is still moving and sound. And then, delegation, learning how to delegate. Like you go from trying to be like a maverick as an artist. It's like, I'm going to be the absolute best compositor that the world has ever seen. And then realizing that you're much more powerful if you teach 3 compositors, stuff that you know. And so, being
That's
able
good.
to delegate, knowing when to delegate. So, like right now, I'm going to be jumping in on projects and I'm going to move them so far, and then I will say, okay, this needs to get finished elsewhere because my time is now worth more time, more elsewhere. So
Fly, little bird, fly at that
Right.
point, right? Copy,
Yeah.
paste, repeat. Yeah, that's great. Okay, and I got one more question. I got to jump
Yeah.
in before we get to these 5 final
Yeah,
follow-ups.
yeah.
Burning tractor. So you said at the very beginning you were on a farm. That's how this tractor
Yes.
thing came into play. Again, I'm a big branding business guy. So burning tractor. Tell us, the story or
Sure.
the reason behind the name.
Sure. So on the farm, it was a 1967 Minneapolis Moline tractor, and it was just our workhorse out there. And so it's a big tractor. The back tires are about 6 feet tall. We had a big 15-foot batwing mower, hydraulic mower, so it lays out like this. And so that's what we would use to move hay bales, drag trailers, tear down fences, just whatever. This thing could just run over trees. And so my brother went to college. I went to college. I have a sister. She's about 7 years younger. She did not do outside chores. So my parents were like, oh, no, all the help is gone. And so they immediately sold all the livestock, and that was it. And so my first summer back from school, the farm looks like it's 50 years older. Like the grass is overgrown. I mean, everything's just like in disarray. And so my mom's like, oh, great, you're home. She's like, good. So I want you to get on the tractor, and I want you to go mow the back 40 acres. And the grass is dead. It's like this tall. And she goes, but she's like, don't run the tractor out of diesel. It has a crack in the diesel tank.
Oof.
And I was like, okay. And I mean, this is 1963. The gas gauge goes like this anyways. Like you don't know what you got in the tank. And so I'm out there and I'm mowing, and I don't have a phone or anything. And I'm just like, man, I was like, it is hot. I was like, it is hot. And I look down, flames are just coming out of this thing.
Oh my
And I'm like,
gosh.
oh shit. So I turn it off. All I have is a Gatorade bottle. And so like I run up and I'm like, and it's like, it just like goes up. And so I'm like, I'm about to burn this pasture down. I'm going to burn the neighbor's pasture down. This is about to be a situation. I don't have a phone. I got to run through grass this tall, like a mile to get back to the barn to, call for help. And so I'm like, crap, that's all I can do. So I turn to run. I hear an explosion, like look around, and the fire melted through the radiator hose, just like this big around. And radiator fluid exploded and put the fire out.
Wow.
Whoa.
So I was like, holy shit. It's like, so go home. I tell my mom, I was like, hey, mom, so I was like, I was mowing, and then the tractor caught on fire, and I tried to put it out, but then it burned through the radiator hose, and it exploded, and then fire put out. So
Good news, we're okay.
Oh my
she's like,
gosh.
damn it, Wes. She's like, you're always messing stuff up, blah, 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 blah. So it turns out it was a bird's nest in the engine that had caught because it hadn't been used in forever, and then the whole thing's doused in diesel. So she told me, she's like, well, go to Tractor Supply Co., get a new radiator hose, put it on, keep mowing. And so we named the company Burning Tractor because no matter what happens, we get the job done.
Oh, that's a great
Dude, that is so
That's
good.
tough farm life, tough mom.
Yeah, tough
get back
mom.
there, get that pasture mode.
Yeah.
Bro,
Burning
I
tractor.
love that
it.
story, man. That's so awesome. Get
So-
the job done. Burning Tractor, man. Super
So,
cool.
Yeah, so our logo, it is the tractor.
Oh,
Wow.
that's great.
That's awesome, man. Well, dude, I feel like I could ask you 100 more questions. And if time wasn't against me, I would continue into those. But there are 5 questions that we like to ask each guest before we wrap them out of here, just in respect to your time. And so I'm going to run through these really quick. But if there is one thing that you could do differently, if you had the chance to do it all over again in your career, what is something that you would do different?
It's hard to say because the things I would do different are based off knowledge I know now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would have gone to the cloud first.
Yeah.
The building of infrastructure and all of that, I probably would have done differently because it was so much moving and changing, and so it's like this location to this location to this location to this location, and then all the investment and all this stuff, which in the end isn't going to matter.
Yeah, man. What is one thing that excites you most about the current film industry?
Oh, it's huge now, so it's never ending. There's so much content; it's never going away. Even in COVID, where I thought we could die, we didn't, and
Yeah.
so it almost feels job secure. No matter like we're in the industry, but no matter what's happening in the world, what's happening with the economy. Oddly enough, because people want to be entertained, we're still going to be working. So.
Someone asked me recently just about like, why should people get into the film business or whatever? Just, I got an interview recently and I was like, the industry is bigger than it has ever been before and the demand has never been higher. The studios cannot keep up with the demand for content right now. And so there's just opportunity everywhere.
And on the commercial side, I mean, everyone, and
100%.
I'll say, I don't know if it's true for you guys, but after 2020, same thing. We were like, oh, are we going to survive this? Like, we brought on new products, live streams. Like, what else can we do that is virtual? And 2020 ended up being one of our biggest years.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's just, 1.5x up because the demand for commercial and everybody realizes how important media is. And to your point, everybody still wants to be entertained. And I think, the screens in our hands, on our phones, and, just entertainment in general, like you're saying.
Yep.
But you find that true after 2020? Like, it got even busier.
Yeah, it's even busier. And then, right now there's a writer's strike.
I was going to ask you how that's affected you.
So for us, we're probably still going to do a network show. But we had already slated, essentially because of coming up in Texas and coming up with Texas Film, we have a great network there. So a couple of our larger projects are sort of through that network, which are outside the writer's strike. And so we were kind of planning on turning most everything else away anyways. And then the network stuff still come. But then next year, it's probably going to be twice as much work because everything's going to get greenlit again.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, film now is crazy. It's like art, engineering, like this, and the technologies around it. It's a really cool. I love it. It's a crazy driving force that like every day it's like, oh wow, now like what, just trying to imagine what's going to be in 10 years. It's just mind-boggling.
It's insane, man. Where, as an industry, are we headed in filmmaking right now, and what should we be focusing on?
Well, definitely, digital, cloud, virtual productions, all those things are changing how we're going to work. Virtual production, I think, is great. I think when the the actual LCD screens themselves, the pixel density is going to start going down. They're going to be less reflective. That's going to get better and better and better. Unreal Engine is becoming a new situation. It's interesting for us because in some regards we can use Unreal now, like working for film, but the difference between Unreal and what we use with all our different software packages is like we have to make something look exactly like it was filmed with this camera, with this lens that's a digital film camera. Unreal Engine looks like a game.
Yeah.
And it will always look like a game. But if I'm doing a car scene where it's a green screen plate inside a car and we're driving through a city and it's all out of focus, I can render that out of Unreal and put depth of field on it and use it in the shot, potentially much, much faster than if we built that with our traditional things. So we have that aspect where it can start being used in some of our larger scale projects.
Yeah, and I even wanted to dive into. I feel like I have like 20 questions I didn't even get to, but like, what do y'all ever work with like Volume Studios and have a hand in any of that virtual production stuff?
We've had limited access. We did a virtual production, a scene virtual production with our last show that we were on set for, and it was moderately successful. You just have limitations where when you want to see the world, you can't really use virtual production because it has to be out of focus. And so when you're looking for those details of this world, even though you're using it for all of your like 2 shots and whatever, it's great. It works great for brighter things, especially. Blacks never get black on a virtual production screen. They're always going to be gray. So like getting true shadows. So in other instances, we've worked with virtual production as in things were shot on it and then it was sent to us and we're literally rotoing everybody out and replacing the backgrounds. Dang. And so without the proper prep going into a VP world, you need to be on the stage. You need to doing camera tests. You need to be doing environment tests. Because even lighting, if you light it like a game, it doesn't look cinematic. It needs to look like a sunlight, just like bang. So a lot more contrast. It's what you would think would look good on a monitor, or what does look good on a monitor doesn't necessarily translate to a virtual production screen through a camera.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Man, that's fascinating. Yeah, something as a DP that I haven't had a chance to do enough of is work in Volume studios and whatnot, and the industry is moving there like really fast, and it's one of those things that it's such a hard, like there's so much art to filming in volumes that you can mess up a lot of stuff really easily, and you have to cut your teeth on it, you know what I mean, like failing forward. And it's something that I have to look forward to just to learn as a DP myself.
It's a hard space to practice because you need to be in one to really get the experience.
And that's the thing, like how do you practice that? You know what I mean? You go get hired for a job and say, yeah, I can figure this out, but just so you know, I've never done this before. Or I've only done this 1 or 2 times, and now I have this new complex challenge that I have to overcome. And so it's just working with a team of people that
It's as a DP, it's not hey, put the light here, do this, do this. You have to work with then, the VP tech. That's all, and then also the environment artist. And so it's definitely a different animal.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I'm looking forward to learning in the future and haven't had the opportunity to do yet. I know there's a couple of big studios too in Dallas that have them. So hopefully sometime this year or soon I get to try. So
So if somebody listening to this, hire Joey for the DP production.
Absolutely.
Joey kind of asked this question earlier, but I'm going to ask it again because I think there's still some advice that you can give to filmmakers that are filmmakers in general, right? Maybe heading towards the VFX industry. What's one piece of advice you would give them, either on the art or the business side? You talked about make a really dope reel, get in those doors, but is there any other advice you would give to somebody starting out in the industry, even on a business side or the art side?
Don't get discouraged and learn. It's you. If you don't get discouraged, or if discouragement is used as your motivation to keep pushing, so many people are fragile, and to be successful in this industry, it's not like I need a DP. I want this guy, and so there is that aspect of film, or it's like I want this company where you're kind of breaking your name in as an artist. And so, never burn the bridge. You don't know where that's going to lead later on. Business is business, and you want to continue. Like, you may have something that sort of went south but you got it done. This person's probably going to call you again. You never want to burn those businesses, and you never want to think that even if you're growing and then you're working for someone who's at the beginning again, you don't want to think that they're not going to ever be there. And so paying respect to the up and comers, as well as paying respect to the people that have been there.
Yeah.
Those are 3 great pieces of advice. That's
100%.
awesome.
And it's applicable to people too, even outside of the VFX world too, because there's a lot of, discouragement even as an up and coming cinematographer or regular editor or director, whatever it is that you're doing, that you have to overcome as well.
Right. And I think as you become better, being willing to show others the way, you're not creating competitors. I mean, you may in the end create competitors, but at that same time, you're building relationships and you're building positive network, and people remember people that make them feel good.
Yeah. I've said it before on the podcast. People don't always remember everything that you say, but they remember how they made you feel, and how you make people feel. And that process is huge, man. And this whole industry is about who you know, not necessarily not just what you know.
Right.
And it's proven true for Wes if you listen to his story, right? Like him being a part of those 80 people that broke off and went to all the different studios, and that's what got him back into the game in Austin, and got a lot of people knocking at your door. So, man, yeah, you gotta work on those relationships and those networks.
Who is one filmmaker that you admire and why?
Oh man, actually, past supervisor that I just got to work with, this guy named Robert Legato, and they're the ones that pulled us in on Emancipation. It was an Apple original, and Robert Legato was in charge of. He's essentially the VFX supervisor. I think he was second unit director. So he was in charge of like finding all the different vendors and kind of piecing that conglomerate monster together. And our name was thrown to him, and he chose us, and so that was fantastic. And then he was actually the guy that came back. He was supervising Air, and so that's how they enjoyed working with us there. But so this guy was on Titanic.
God,
we're talking, old school.
OG.
His language totally different. He uses the word print a lot. It's like, oh, this isn't printed right. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But extremely technical, knowledgeable. Definitely. It's like our parents' age essentially, and he's in Unreal 5.
Wow.
And he's in Resolve, and he's in everything, and he's better at it. And I'm like, I know this stuff. And he's like crushing me in it.
Dang.
Know?
Wow.
And so he's like staying up with the tech, extremely creative, and then that much experience. So I learned a lot working with him, and just, admirable that he's done it for so long and is still at the top. Because I feel like some people, it's, once they become like executive producers or whatnot, it's not really the craft to them anymore. It is kind of the business. And this guy is definitely still in the craft.
I love that.
It's inspiring for sure.
I love that, man. Before I wrap you out of here, I got to know, what was it like on Emancipation and Air, the 2 big films that you've recently worked on? Tell me a little bit about just those films.
Sure.
Before we get you out of here, man.
Emancipation was actually like, we were sort of an afterthought as far as one of the vendors. So, it was filmed in the can, the whole thing. And, they're like, hey, can you knock these sequences out? And we were like, sure. And we're like, what's the deadline? And they told us it was like 4 or 5 months away. I was expecting 3 weeks or something. And so, we kind of worked the shots, and then we sent them, and they were approved. We V1, V2'd most of the work we did on Emancipation.
Wow.
We had a couple challenging things with some animals where we had to do some fun stuff. And, there were a couple that went through the paces a bit. But, really smooth, really, really smooth show. Air was a situation. So what we did on Air, primarily set extension work. And so it was filmed in Pasadena. And so the Nike headquarters is based in Portland, Oregon. And so that's what we're trying to show is it looks like it's in Portland, Oregon. in 1985. And so they had all these drone shots and exterior shots of that building. Same thing, Converse is supposed to be in Massachusetts. And then Adidas, they didn't even film at all. So it's just fully CG. And so the majority of our work was like doing these set extensions. And I don't want to say too much, but it's the note chain we would get, it'd be like, okay, so we're going to add a Converse sign to this building. So we do that. So that's version 1. And they're like, oh, actually, make this road half as wide. So that's version 2. And then actually make the parking lot half as big. That's version 3. Okay, can we add trees to this? And so, we got to version 25 on that show. But it was creative changes, that would just get iterated and iterated. Something we could have done in the first round. But, as the show progressed and people would view it, you would get different sets of eyes on things and more notes and more notes. And so we worked on that one for quite a bit of time. And I had no idea it was going to be as big as it was. So the Super Bowl come out and the trailers in the Super Bowl, it's like,
that's so cool.
I don't really get into the I don't get starstruck really at all. And we watch the stuff we work on, but a lot of times we're sick of it because we'll be on a project 9 months or something. But Air, I thoroughly enjoyed. Loved the story. It was really cool seeing it out there in the world now. So and something we're really proud of too.
That's awesome, man. Congrats. Well, before Joey wraps us out, I got to say, going back how I met you, you and I worked on a show called The Crimson, or a short film, and that was back when I was DPing still. And I remember I would just have to say, having Wes on set, VFX souping that put me at ease because I didn't know what I was doing at all. And I was like, we were trying to do this scene, and maybe we'll show it where there's like this, blast effect.
I have the shot on our Reels thing. I'll send it to you.
Oh, that's awesome.
I have it.
So cool. That's cool. So it made the reel. That's sick, man. Yeah. So it's this really cool shot, and I remember, Wes through the whole process, man, he did a lot of consults with me before, and then I think at some point he was like, "Do you want to just, this is a low budget, short film. This is way back in the day." And Wes was like, "You want me to just come out there and VFX supervise?" And I'm like, "Oh, that would be so good, man. I'm so nervous that this shot I'm not going to execute what the director wants on this." And he came out. It was in the middle of the night, I feel like, because we had to shoot at night. We had a moon, flew the moon and had, a bunch of people out on set. I'm up on a crane shooting down into this ravine. And I remember after like a little, after Wes and I were talking through a couple of things, and we're talking about like, do we need a plate? Do we need this? And he's like, I got it. I got this all handled. He knew what it was going. He just made totally calm the whole time. And I'm over there sweating. Like, is this gonna work? But anyways. All that to say, the shot turned out fantastic. When I got to see the shot, I was just like, I helped make this. I mean, Wes basically made most of it, but this is awesome.
Right.
So highly recommend Wes with my experience. And I think we've done a couple of things together. Yeah. And then Joey and you. Joey, I mean...
Same exact experience for me, where I was like, dude, I don't know how you're going to turn this into what the director is looking for. And he's like, fly a blue 12 by. That's all we need. And like, and the talent barely even like fit inside of this. And he's like, don't worry about it. And just like cool as a cucumber. And got the final shot back. And I was like, mic drop moment, man.
And this is Washington's Armor. Since you didn't name drop it, I'll name drop Washington's Armor, the first feature film Joey DP'd. And we'll throw that, hopefully we can throw that clip up, or maybe even I think I saw a really cool like comparison, like
you
before and after,
like the official VFX comparison.
Yeah, I have those broken down.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So fun, man. Yeah. Well, Wes, it has been an honor to have you in the studio, my friend. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, absolutely.
Is there anything before we wrap you out of here that I didn't ask you, or that you want to say or leave the audience before we close out, man?
I don't know. I think you covered most of it.
Cool.
I just to this day, it's just it's humbling. It's nice being here. It's the business is incredible. Kind of wake up every morning, pinch myself these days. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. How can people get connected with you, Wes, and your company?
Sure. So burningtractor.com, burning like a fire, tractor like a farm tractor. So www.burningtractor.com. That's the best way. And we have a contact on there. And so it'll send you to, I think it's contact@burningtractor.com or info. But you can see some of the shows we worked on and some of the reels and stuff on the site. So, yeah.
That's awesome. We'll put the link in the description on YouTube. And if you're listening on the podcast, we'll include it there too.
Great.
Yep. So awesome, man. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us today. If you are listening in, be sure to give us at the Rough Cut Club a like, follow, subscribe, smash that like button, all that good cringy stuff that I can say at the end there. So anyway, thank you.
And before we wrap out, Wes, I gotta add one more thing. This could be a challenge for the Rough Cut Club. Joey's like panicking what I'm about to
What's
say here.
happening here?
These T-shirts, are there any of these T-shirts that you created out in the world, like maybe at thrift stores or something?
Possibly.
Tell us one design or a couple of designs.
Cat astronaut. I mean, we did the castronauts. The
castronauts?
My parents had like 9 cats. That was the first thing I did. Is I
Yeah.
took pictures of them. I made them astronauts. That's a thing. But I mean, they are fire.
Oh my gosh!
They are
So if
super
you're
good.
listening to this, if you find the Castronauts T-shirt, okay, put it on, take a picture, tag us on Instagram, tag Wes, tag at the Rough Cut Club, and maybe we'll send you a
Castronauts.
little something from the Rough Cut Club.
So awesome, man.
Doc Castronaut. That was a top seller on Amazon.
I love it, man. Thank you so much again for your time, man. This has been a great episode, and we will catch you guys later.
Cheers.